Charles. He's so young.
And why should my children be subjected to that kind of thing?
Because we have heard for years about the...
What happened to Judy Garland's 3 children will leave you stunned. While the entire world mourned the loss of one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived, almost no one stopped to ask how the children she left behind would go on living after the funeral doors closed. If you think they grew up surrounded by the immense fortune Judy Garland left behind, you're wrong. No mansion, no luxury cars, no clear will. The only thing they received was the loss of their mother and a mountain of debt waiting to be settled. But that's not all. Most recently, revelations from her youngest son have exposed a chilling truth behind the American dream was a calculated system where trust was exploited and where the very people who were supposed to protect Judy Garland were the ones who pushed both her and her children into tragedy. Don't look away. The tragic secret of Judy Garland's 3 children is about to be revealed right now. The final truth will make you see this story in a way you never have before. Judy Garland, the tragedy of fame. She was born Frances Ethel Gum on June 10, 1922 in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, before America came to know her as Judy Garland. Her father, Frank Gum, managed a movie theater. Her mother, Ethel, was the kind of person who believed ambition wasn't a choice, but the only way to survive. They had 3 daughters, and the whole family earned extra money through vaudeville performances. Judy Garland was forced to grow up far too early. Instead of living like other children her age, she carried the burden of earning money. The family owned a small theater, and that led Garland onto the stage at just 3 years old. Her mother did everything she could to push her daughters into show business, making them perform in bars and casinos to impress producers. At 13, Garland signed with MGM, one of the biggest film studios at the time. But that never truly brought her any joy. Her packed schedule led her mother and the studio to force her to take all kinds of sedatives and stimulants. At 15, Judy Garland became dependent on drugs, and that habit followed her for the rest of her life. According to Time, during the filming and promotion of The Wizard of Oz, MGM gave Garland amphetamines, a stimulant that kept her alert on set. At night, they forced her to take pills to sleep on schedule. During this period, Judy Garland also became obsessed with her weight after inappropriate comments from studio executives. They constantly forced her to diet. According to Time, while filming a scene where she drank a milkshake, the 15-year-old girl was only allowed to pretend to touch the straw to her lips, not actually drink it, even though she was starving. The Wizard of Oz turned Garland into an A-list Hollywood star. She went on to star in hit films like Meet Me in St. Louis and Easter Parade. But that success also pulled her deeper into psychological struggles, largely the result of constant use of sedatives and stimulants. In her early 20s, she had already begun abusing alcohol. Judy Garland's health deteriorated significantly, causing her to frequently miss filming. Doctors advised that she should only work 4 or 5 sessions per week and needed breaks between long shoots. MGM suspended Judy Garland multiple times before officially terminating her contract in 1950 after 15 years of service. Later, when she reached the age of marriage, Judy Garland believed that marriage would help her escape a distorted childhood and shield her from life's tragic fate. However, despite going through 5 marriages and having 3 children, the one thing she could never hold on to was the simplest thing of all, a home peaceful enough to save her from tragedy. A chain of marital scandals, 5 times falling and rising again. At 18, she fell in love with musician David Rose and became pregnant. That relationship was immediately opposed by Garland's family and studio because Rose had not yet finalized his divorce from his previous wife. Garland's mother forced her to have an abortion and did not allow them to go public with their relationship. The couple married in 1941. It was a highly controversial decision at the time. Garland, MGM's rising star, was only 19 while Rose was 12 years older. Her mother and MGM executives tried to stop the marriage, fearing that a wedding would destroy the innocent girl image she had built after The Wizard of Oz. But Garland defied them and rushed to Las Vegas with Rose to get married. Their shared passion for music was not enough to keep them together. They were too different. Rose was reserved and private, while Garland loved parties, music, and dancing more than anything. They divorced in 1944. After David Rose, the men who came after brought her even more pain. Although her second marriage brought joy when in March 1946 she gave birth to her daughter, Liza Minnelli, who later became a famous star that home still could not save her. During her marriage to her second husband, director Vincente Minnelli, she once attempted suicide by cutting her wrist with a piece of glass, but survived. According to PBS News, her struggles with severe depression and anxiety pushed Garland toward self-soothing with alcohol and drugs like amphetamines and sleeping pills, substances that had followed her since childhood. After being fired by MGM after 15 years, Garland fell into a mental collapse and spiraled into despair, leading to 2 failed suicide attempts. That pressure weighed heavily on her marriage to Minnelli, and Garland began having affairs. She and Minnelli divorced in 1951. Next came Joey Luft, her third husband. They had 2 children together, Lorna Luft, born in November 1952, and Joey Luft, born in March 1955. But that marriage also turned into a nightmare. Joey was reportedly an alcoholic and frequently abused Garland and her children. Later, Garland also accused Mark Herron of abusing her. Meanwhile, Herron admitted they had physical altercations, but claimed he only hit Garland in self-defense. After their breakup, Mark Herron publicly came out as gay and began dating another male actor. Mickey Deans, Judy Garland's final husband, was seen by many as the man who pushed her to the edge of despair. They met when Garland left her children to go to London to perform and earn money to pay off debts. Deans, then a nightclub owner, tried every way to get close to the star because he saw financial opportunity in her. He forced Garland to keep performing even when her health was unstable. The star had to increase her drug use just to keep up with the schedule, and she died only 3 months after marrying Deans. In the book, Not the End of the Rainbow, Lorna Luft, Judy Garland's daughter, recalled a chilling detail. While riding in the car with Deans on the way to my mother's funeral, he asked the driver to stop at a publishing house to sign a contract. After that, Deans wrote a book about their time together, titled Weep No More, My Lady, the best-selling story of Judy Garland. He finalized the deal just hours before her mother's funeral. A tragic genius may be the most fitting phrase for Judy Garland. She left behind a trail of unfinished careers, and most importantly, her 3 children still far too young. Those 3 children, Liza, Lorna, and Joey, were thrown into a life no one would wish to endure. They grew up knowing their mother was one of the most famous people on the planet. They saw her sing on stages packed with audiences. They saw her face on magazine covers, her name shining on grand theaters. Then, when the youngest child was only 14, she was gone. And what those 3 children went through has never truly been told with the full weight of its pain. 3 fragile lives, a hidden childhood. The first child, Liza Minnelli, was born on March 12, 1946. Judy welcomed her first daughter from her marriage to director Vincente Minnelli. Liza recalled her childhood. My mother was very strict, but fair. She never punished us excessively. Liza, now 73, also told the New York Times in 1984 that from a very young age she was always treated like an adult and quickly became someone her mother confided in and leaned on for comfort. Although they were very close, Liza said life with her mother was filled with turmoil. Lorna Luft, the second daughter, was born on November 21, 1952. The first child of Judy Garland was Liza Minnelli, born on March 12, 1946, from her marriage to director Vincente Minnelli. From a very young age, Liza did not grow up like a normal child. She recalled that her mother was strict but fair, never punishing excessively. On the surface, that still sounded like a loving mother. But behind that strictness was a far more painful truth. Liza said that from childhood she was always treated like an adult. That meant while other children were free to cry, to be upset, to live in their own world, Liza had already become the listener, the comforter, even the emotional support for her own mother. The bond between them was deep, but never truly peaceful. It was the kind of closeness that forces a child to grow up too early, quietly stealing away the childhood that should have belonged to her. The second child was Lorna Luft, born on November 21, 1952. If Liza grew up as the first witness to the hidden storms in Judy's life, Lorna grew up in the middle of its most chaotic period. In 1988, Lorna published her memoir, Me and My Shadows, a family memoir, which was later adapted into an Emmy-winning television miniseries in 2001. In that book, she described her childhood as a house always on the verge of collapse, where her mother gradually sank into prescription drugs, the very thing that ultimately took Judy Garland away from her children in 1969. But what makes Lorna's story even more painful is that she never wanted her mother to be reduced to a simple, tragic symbol. Over the years, Lorna repeatedly rejected the way the public remembered Judy only as a broken woman. She said her mother was funny, warm, and extraordinarily talented. That is what made Lorna's childhood so complex. She did not grow up with a completely dark mother, but with one who could still love her children, still light up a room, yet could not save herself. The youngest child was Joey Luft, born on March 29, 1955. Joey also witnessed the cycles of light and darkness in his mother's life from an early age. He once said that when he saw his mother behaving strangely, he asked his father if she was ill and gradually began to understand. As a child, that realization was incredibly cruel because it left behind a kind of helplessness a child cannot even name. Joey was only 14 when Judy Garland died from a sedative overdose. But like Lorna, he did not hold on only to the darkness. Joey chose to remember his mother as a woman who still baked for her children, still read to them until they fell asleep. And perhaps that is the most painful part of this story. Judy Garland's 3 children did not just lose their mother too early. They grew up witnessing 2 people, in one body, a legend admired by the world, and a mother quietly breaking apart right before their eyes. And if you think a woman as famous as Judy Garland must have left her children a fortune large enough to make up for those losses, you would be wrong, because Judy Garland never truly received what she deserved from the glory she created. Her journey to conquer Hollywood and the price she paid. She would spend the next 27 years of her life trying to win back control of that body, then losing it again, then trying one more time. When Judy Garland entered Hollywood, she did not bring only talent with her. She also brought a habit that had been programmed into her since childhood: obey, trust, and let other people decide for her. At first, that helped her move faster than almost anyone else. But in the long run, it became the very thing that kept her in a weaker position, kept her under other people's control, and made her an easy target for exploitation. At her peak in the 1950s, Garland was a performance machine no one could match. Sold-out shows stretched across America and the United Kingdom, packed auditoriums, applause so long it felt like it would never stop. She could earn $15,000 to $20,000 a week, an enormous amount at the time. Before she even turned 18, she had already brought in more than $400,000 from film. And over the course of her career, that total nearly reached $10 million. To anyone looking from the outside, it looked like the life of a woman who had won, a woman who had everything. But the truth always lived behind the lights. Garland never truly controlled what she earned. She trusted people too easily. She trusted managers, trusted family, trusted the men who came into her life promising to protect her. And that trust kept leading her into decisions she did not fully understand. Bad contracts, uncontrolled spending, people around her who were both emotional support and financial burden. She was not the calculating type. She was the kind of person who lived through emotion and in an industry run by money and power that was a fatal weakness. The more successful she became, the tighter the spiral pulled. One performance after another, long tours nights when she had to stand on stage, even though her body was already exhausted. Garland had no right to stop, because behind every pause was a long list of bills waiting: managers, ex-husbands, hotels, taxes, medication. Numbers that kept piling up like a shadow always right behind her. And every time she made money, most of it never truly stayed with her. This was the most painful contradiction in Judy Garland's life. A woman who could make an entire theater rise to its feet, yet could not hold on to what she had created. A woman who could shake thousands of people in an audience, yet could not protect her own finances. And the more she tried to work her way out of it, the deeper she was pulled into it. Her trust in other people never really disappeared, even after she had been deceived so many times. Garland always believed this time would be different. This person would be different. This decision would be different. But reality kept repeating the same pattern. People came, made promises, then left, leaving behind debts, trouble, and a Garland who was more drained each time. That was not simple naivete. It was the result of a childhood in which she was never allowed to learn how to protect herself. By the end of her life, Garland's financial picture had almost completely collapsed. Her estate, the thing the public assumed would be a massive fortune, was in reality nearly empty. The debts far outweighed the assets. Different sources suggest the amount may have reached hundreds of thousands of dollars, a significant sum at the time. And what matters is that those debts did not come from one single bad decision. They came from a long chain of choices she never fully controlled. Looking back, Judy Garland's journey to conquer Hollywood was not just a story about talent and fame. It was a story about the price a person pays when they are pushed into the spotlight too early, taught how to please everyone, but never taught how to protect themselves. She spent 27 years trying to regain control of her own life. But every time she thought she had finally touched it, everything slipped through her hands once again. And if there is one thing that makes this story heavier than anything else, it is that Garland never lacked effort. She was not someone who gave up. She always came back, always got back up, always stepped onto the stage one more time. But sometimes effort is not enough to defeat a system that was already in place long before you even understood how it worked. By the time it was all over, what remained was not the $10 million she had once earned, not the sold-out nights, not the applause. What remained was a financial void, a worn-out body, and a life consumed far too much by the people she had once trusted, the legacy of a lifetime of devotion. If Judy Garland's life was one long tragedy, then her professional legacy feels like a contradiction that is almost impossible to believe. A woman worn down by drugs, contracts, box office pressure, and one emotional collapse after another, yet every time she stepped onto a stage, she did something very few performers in history have ever been able to do. She made the audience forget everything except feeling. Judy was not just a star. She was a standard, the kind of artist who only had to open her mouth and the whole room would go silent, then a few seconds later explode like a wave. And that is why when people talk about Judy Garland tragedy, alone is not enough. You have to talk about a career built on real talent but paid for with almost her entire life. Judy stepped onto the stage before she even understood what a career was. But what made her different from other child prodigies was not just that she could sing well or act well. Judy had something far rarer, real emotion. Even in her early years at MGM, she was never the kind of actress who simply stood there looking pretty. She brought fragility into her roles, a hunger to be loved, and a loneliness that even adults sometimes cannot name. That is why The Wizard of Oz was not just a successful movie. It became part of America's memory. Dorothy was not just a little girl who got lost. She was the image of a child trying to find her way back to a place that may never have existed at all. And from that point on, Over the Rainbow was no longer just a song in a movie. It became the symbol of an entire generation and also Judy's own emotional signature. After that success, Judy did not stop. She kept proving that she was not just a one-time phenomenon. Films like Meet Me and St. Louis Easter Parade and A Star is Born followed one after another, and each time she appeared, Judy showed a different version of herself. At times gentle and graceful, at times explosive and full of energy, at times so fragile that the audience could not look away. Especially in A Star is Born. Judy was not just acting. It felt like she was telling her own life story. That role brought her a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination, but more importantly, it proved one thing: Judy Garland was not just a singer. She was an actress with real depth. But if film is where Judy is remembered, the stage is where she truly came alive. In the 1950s, when many people thought her best years were behind her, Judy came back through live performances and created a phenomenon. Sold-out nights, full auditoriums, applause that went on so long it would not stop. Judy did not just sing. She told stories, she laughed, she cried, and she pulled the audience into a world where every emotion was real. It was no longer just a show. It was a conversation between a woman who had lived through too much and people who could see themselves in her. The peak of all of that may have been the album Judy at Carnegie Hall. A live performance, yet it became one of the greatest live albums in history. The album topped the charts for many weeks and won the Grammy for Album of the Year, making Judy the first woman to ever do that. But its value was not in the numbers or the awards. It was in the message. At a moment when many people thought she was finished, Judy Garland stepped onto that stage and proved that real talent does not disappear. It only waits for the right moment to explode again. And she did not stop there. Judy also conquered television with The Judy Garland Show, a program that helped her hold on to her appeal with mainstream audiences while also earning multiple Emmy nominations. That showed Judy was not the star of just one moment. She was an artist of multiple eras, multiple platforms, and multiple generations. From film to music, from the stage to television, she left a clear mark on all of it. But there is something more important than all those awards. Judy Garland changed the way people looked at performers. She did not sing to be perfect. She sang to be real. And that very imperfection is what made her irreplaceable. So many artists who came after her, from singers to actors, learned one thing from Judy: the audience does not need you to be perfect. They need you to be real. So if Judy Garland's legacy had to be reduced to one idea, it would not be a list of movies or awards. It would be the way she made people feel. The Wizard of Oz keeps her in memory. A Star is Born keeps her in film history. Carnegie Hall keeps her in music history. But what keeps her alive the longest is the emotion she left behind. And maybe the greatest contradiction of all is this: Judy Garland may not have been able to keep peace in her own life, but in entertainment, she did something very few people ever do. She turned talent into legacy. A legacy that even today, many decades after she was gone, people still listen to, still watch, still talk about, and still feel as if it were the first time. The powerful influence of superstar Judy Garland. There is something very strange about Judy Garland's story. She was not just a star, she was a phenomenon. And the way she existed in the entertainment industry was unlike anyone else. She was not the kind of artist who became famous because of just one role or one era. She was someone who could walk onto a stage stand, still begin to sing, and make an entire room go silent. No effects, no tricks, just her voice and her emotion. That is what made Judy Garland an icon that even today is still incredibly hard to replace. When The Wizard of Oz was released, Judy did not just become famous. She became part of American pop culture. The image of Dorothy, the voice behind Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and the way she expressed emotion were burned into the minds of millions. But what matters even more is that Judy did not stop there. After being fired by MGM, something that could have ended anyone's career, she came back through the stage. And not in any ordinary way. She exploded. Her performances at the Palace Theatre in London and in New York all sold out. The audience did not come just to hear her sing, they came to see Judy Garland, a real human being full of emotion, imperfect yet deeply genuine. That very honesty is what created her lasting influence. Judy was not a perfect role model. She trembled, she was fragile, she could fall apart. But when she stood on stage, she brought all of that in front of the audience. No hiding, no covering it up. And that is exactly why people believed her, loved her, remembered her. It was the kind of influence that did not come from media, but from real emotion. And among those most powerfully influenced by her, none other than her daughter, Liza Minnelli. Liza did not just grow up in a famous family, she grew up right beside a living legend. From a very young age, Liza followed her mother to film sets, to the stage, to rehearsals. She did not learn art in the usual way. She learned by watching the way her mother walked onto a stage, watching the way her mother handled an audience, watching the way her mother turned a song into a story, and more importantly, watching the way her mother got back up after every collapse. There is one detail worth noticing. Liza once said she was not treated like a child. She was treated like an adult from a very early age. That sounds cruel, but it was also the very thing that helped her understand the craft so quickly. While others were still learning how to act, Liza already understood what a stage was. While others were learning how to sing correctly, Liza was learning how to deliver emotion. And that was the difference. But Judy's influence was not just in technique, it was in mindset. Judy Garland never performed in a shallow way. She always put real feeling into every lyric, and Liza learned that. When she entered the entertainment business, Liza did not try to become a copy of her mother. She carried that spirit with her, then turned it into a style of her own. That is why when Liza succeeded with Cabaret and won an Oscar, people did not just see Judy Garland in her. They saw an independent artist, but one with very clear roots. At the same time, this was also the dark side of that influence. Liza did not just inherit talent, she inherited pressure too. When your mother is Judy Garland, you never get to start from zero. You start from beneath a very large shadow. People will compare you. They will expect things from you. They will wait to see whether you are worthy, and that creates a pressure not everyone can survive. But Liza did survive it, not by running from that shadow, but by walking straight into it. She did not deny her mother. She did not try to completely separate herself from her. She accepted those roots, then built a career of her own from that very foundation. It was an incredibly difficult choice, but it was also the choice that made her one of the rare artists to achieve EGOT. If you look more broadly, Judy Garland's influence did not stop with Liza. It spread across the entire entertainment industry. From the way artists perform live to the way they connect with audiences to the acceptance of imperfection on stage. Judy changed the way people looked at a performer, no longer as some distant figure, but as a real human being with a full range of emotion. But when we come back to the family story, the thought that lingers is that level of influence was both a gift and a burden. It opened the door for Liza. It inspired her to enter the entertainment world. But at the same time, it also placed a pressure on her shoulders that very few people could truly understand. So when you look at this story, the question is not how Judy Garland influenced her daughter. The real question is, can a shadow that large ever be completely good? Or does it always come with a price that only the person living under it can truly understand? What do you think about this story?
This content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Thoughtfully compiled from public archives, historical records, and classic articles. While we strive for accuracy and balanced storytelling, some details from Hollywood's golden age remain unconfirmed and should be treated as speculative. We encourage viewers to draw their own independent conclusions. If this journey through Hollywood's shadows resonated with you, please leave a gentle like and subscribe with the bell icon so you never miss our next chapter. To continue uncovering the forgotten tragedies of the Golden Age, simply select the video on your screen right now. Thank you for keeping their memories alive.